to our panel discussion. I always love panel because really they give you different perspective. And if our panelists are from different domains, they share their uniqueness and also their commonality from different angle to address. So here, we will ask Kunal and Anshul back to the panel, and we will have a Samir from TrueFort. So Samir is a CEO from TrueFort. And we also have Kamil. Kamil is the Senior Director, IAM, Identity and Access Management Engineering at RBC. All right, so why don't we start with Samir? Samir, can you do a quick introduction about yourself?
Sure, Bryan. Thanks for having me on the panel. And I think, Cyber Tech and Risk is doing a great job in educating the industry and bringing people along with these tough challenges around cyber. I'm Samir Malhotra. I'm the CEO and founder of TrueFort. TrueFort's focused on helping organizations protect their applications using the Zero Trust framework. Prior to starting TrueFort, I spent 23 years in financial services at some of the world's largest banks, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and JP Morgan Chase, where I've run global infrastructure across those organizations, and happy to be on this panel.
Excellent. And Samir actually spoke at our previous last December at the application-centric security. And Samir has a great experience, as you can hear, so from all the major banks in US, and he has a great background experience there. And also he is in his adventure to have this TrueFort, a very cutting-edge leading technology company. Kunal, because I know you're from New Zealand, tell a little bit about yourself.
So first of all, Bryan, thank you very much for inviting me to talk to everybody about Zero Trust, and this is a very great initiative you're doing, so really appreciate. So for me, my name is Kunal. I am originally from India, but for last 9 years, I'm living in New Zealand. And last year, 2020, I decided to move to Canada. And then I moved in Canada in February, joined Microsoft again. So I'm kind of returning again to Microsoft. I used to work before Microsoft. And then all this COVID happened. Then I thought, okay, maybe I'll go back to New Zealand for a while. So I'm working from New Zealand. And I'm happy because it's a little better here compared to other parts. So yeah, and in my role, I look after the Canadian customers and the manufacturing customer in US, focusing on the security related stuff, predominantly on Microsoft Azure Active Directory with B2E, like business to enterprise, business to business, and business to consumer, those different kind of user profile. At the same time, other security products in Microsoft, like Microsoft CASB solution, information protection, and different defined entities. So yeah, so whole in all, Zero Trust and all that kind of stuff.
Excellent. And with your role as an architect, because you oversee all those things, how they are together, that's really suitable for a Zero Trust model, right? So to look at that from architecture point of view.
Because as we know, like Zero Trust is not a switch that you go into, or you cannot just buy one product and then you are in Zero Trust. It touches everything within your organization.
Exactly. We'll touch on more on that one. So Anshul, tell a little bit, tell some interesting thing about yourself.
Yeah, so thanks for having me, Bryan. I appreciate you giving the time, and to Cyber Tech Press. So I've been with Thycotic for about 3-4 years. I've been in the identity and access industry for almost 6 to 7. I've also been fortunate, right? I was actually born in India. Right? I lived a good part of my life in the United States, and now for the last, I would say, 20 years, 15 years, been in Canada.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about yourself. Can you do a quick introduction about yourself, Kamil?
Oh, sure. Thanks for bringing me on here, Bryan. I lead identity and access management engineering and application support at RBC. My team is responsible for maintaining the enterprise as well as customer identity access management systems at the bank globally. We have a tremendous weight on our shoulders, but the work is very rewarding. And I've been in the industry for many years, lived through many iterations and changes in security as well as IAM in particular. So I'm really looking forward to partnering with the rest of this great panel on delivering some good quality to the audience.
Perfect. All right, cool. Okay, so thanks again for joining this panel. Now it's my turn to ask some questions to you guys. And in the meantime, I would encourage people online just submit your question and submit on the chat and the Q&A. I will also watch out from that list and pick some of questions to ask our panels. All right, so the first question here, we usually start the panel from the question about why we need this concept. Because I did see a couple of people. We had a talk about zero trust almost like 2 years ago. At that time, seems like not as hot as today. Today, like quite many companies already using zero trust. It doesn't matter if it's in the product or in their approach or in their project. So from your perspective, why are more and more companies adopting the zero trust security model today? So why that's so important? And so I'd like to give Samir first, then Kamil second. Then after that, Kunal and Anshul, because you already talked about that one, so you can add to that point.
Right, sure, Bryan. Great question. So let's look at how we got here, right? You know, in the speed of industry, technology was meant to automate our functions, right? And so we built all these technology and applications to make things easier, faster, and so forth. But as we started to develop frameworks and implement business processes, security was always secondary. And we lived in an era of excessive trust. You know, because that was the easy thing to do, right? So when you think about certain industries, like in the defense side, right, they've always thought of security first in anything that they do. And we haven't been able to, as an industry, define the right terminologies around this. And when the network side came up with the whole concept of zero trust, understand what the connectivity is. I think that's been something that we as an industry as a whole can gravitate towards and understand what that means in the simplistic form, being a set of processes that allow us to make sure that anything we execute or connect or run or try to automate is done with deliberation. So it's more about being deliberate, understanding. And so the zero trust framework helps us to get and build the capabilities around getting to deliberation. So in short, it's understand everything, make sure it's in line with expected behavior, as the gentleman from Thycotic had brought up. I can't see his name, Kunal, Anshul. That behavior is important. Measure that and make sure it's deliberate. And so the best way to define that is saying zero trust.
Okay. So from what you mentioned, zero trust is a kind of a natural, it's not like a one overnight become the hot, right? So gradually this term kind of align with a lot of best practice process that become adopted by the whole industry, but not overnight, but gradually to adopt. Come to today, become the common kind of hot model, standard, kind of like a standard model. All right, very cool. Kamil, what do you say about this one?
I'll add maybe to Samir's point, you know, around the statements he made. I experienced this actually firsthand. You know, the overprivilege and the overpermissioning of access typically, you know, and it doesn't just mean to identities. It means around network connectivity being too wide open, Swiss cheese firewall configurations. You know, those are things that enabled the first and very immature cloud program attempts at being rolled out. I experienced some of that firsthand. So definitely a great point. As to why the adoption is increasing, I think I would connect that very strongly to what Kunal said, which is assume breach mindset. Lots of organizations are adopting this mindset now in how they formulate not just the technology, but also their policies and their standards. And that is driving the adoption of maybe not zero trust as a whole, but certainly pieces of it to make sure that they change their access and their adoption of security practices and really turn into this new mode of working, which can be fruitful, can contribute speed of delivery. But again, as Samir mentioned, without security being built in, it's going to be a field day for our dark side friends.
That's perfect. Yeah, so that's great insight. And assume bridge, that's also very important because in old days, sometimes when we deploy some controls, we think, okay, our job done, right? So within certain domains, internal network, we're safe, kind of like those assumptions, but those really challenge those some like old model. All right. Okay, so Kunal, from an architecture point of view, what can you say? Okay, because why we need like a zero trust model?
Yeah. So right in my presentation, I also mentioned that the landscape is changing, right? I mean, the organization traditionally, which was very close knit, everything was within the system. It's not true anymore, right? The applications are moving out, the assets are moving out, and then there's a lot of collaboration happening. Like it's not just organization doing everything on their own. They need business partners and collaborators, and there's so much of influx of user coming in, and so you just can't be. So there's a two facet to it, right? You can't be like totally keep it very secure and then compromise the business productivity. You don't want that, and at the same time, you don't want to open everything up and make business productivity your main goal, and then put a big hole on your security posture. So you don't want to do that. And I think zero trust brings that balance. So what it does is that it gives opportunity for collaboration, for cross company and different type of consumers and identities to talk to each other, but at the same time balancing it out with that verify first and then trust methodology. It's a very traditional concept, right? If you just get inside a building, that doesn't mean that you're allowed to go to level 3 or level 4. You need to show your badge and prove it. Same happens with your airport. When you go to airport and want to board a airplane ticket, just having a ticket doesn't make sense, doesn't prove that you will get a chance to board it. You have to show your passport. So these kind of assurance level is quite important. And I think zero trust is actually using all those traditional practices, which anyway in human to human interaction we do. Those practices, it's getting brought into the technology spectrum. So that's the only thing.
Perfect. And you mentioned very important concept really is the collaboration, because not a single company can do everything by themselves. So you always, because people have a question here. So what about third-party risk, even fourth-party risk, right? So collaborations, but how do you ensure security when you do those collaborations? So zero trust, that's become on the landscape. And a lot of times, zero trust is related to privileged access management, right? So with that, Anshul, from your point of view, how that come up with a PAM and zero trust security?
So yeah, I mean, technically, PAM's real addressable point is the fact that we're kind of highlighting the zero trust model, right? Because we don't want to give. We just want to give enough access, or we want to give you timed access. And on top of, as PAM solutions grow, just like ourselves, we're integrating with other solutions to verify, make sure that you now have just enough access to what you need to do your job for, and nothing more than that. So you can't unilaterally move about the enterprise or the organization. And even if by chance something is happening, you want to limit the amount of damage one can do. Right.
Okay, yeah. So that's back to the one of the concepts also Kunal mentioned as well, the least privilege, right? So how do you kind of control the damage? All right, cool. So we come up with we know why that's important. The next question is, what is not about zero trust? Because well, whenever there's some buzzword like in the industry, people tend to use that everywhere, just like AI and then machine learning. People are using that everywhere. So based on your like a practice or your experience, what are the things kind of like a misconceptions about zero trust security? So anyone can jump in. There's no specific order.
Yeah, Bryan. I think, you know, as with every way we've tried to define security over the years, there is an assumption that you can just turn on a switch. And unfortunately, it's not true, especially some of our colleagues who've come from large industry, banks, or healthcare, or pharmaceuticals, or utilities, for that matter, know that we've built technologies over a period of time. So zero trust is not a switch that you turn on. It's a process that you go through. It's an end state that you try to get to. But the key factors are, one, do you have visibility into what's going on in your environment? Can you truly say, I understand? Do I have the ability to get that information so that you can model it or use behavioral techniques around that? Without having that baseline capability, the challenge of getting to a trusted model or a zero trust model is going to be difficult. This, you know, so fundamentals are important. I think getting to the goal is an excellent objective. You know, how can you start to measure your journey in the path, starting with visibility, then getting to controls, and then finally getting the capabilities of automation and response to any behaviors outside your trust perimeter. And additionally, what you'll start to see is your journey through there requires something called adaptive trust. I'm throwing in a new term, but I think it's within the same framework. What that means is that as change happens, right, the mistake that we don't want to do is create a rigid structure. It's about understanding everything from a deliberation point of view, but going through the journey, understanding how you're going to get there. So zero trust is not something I'm going to say, let me buy a product tomorrow and install it, and I'm a zero trust and everything's gone great. I'm sure Kamil can tell you how many products he's bought and satisfied that requirement. But it's about making sure you have the visibility, you know the journey, crawl, walk, and run, and take the organization along with you through that.
Okay.
Yeah. Samir makes a great point there, and totally agree. That's probably the number one misconception. I would say maybe around security in general. You know, which tool is going to fix my security problem? So definitely not the case. And I agree with Samir. And really, the point I always go back to around zero trust, really as a model of taking an organization's security posture and improving it, is policies and standards. You know, how are you going to build that foundation, as Samir said, around what decisions you're going to make when you're designing your products, when you're deploying systems and applications, and that also includes the security controls that you need to build it out for your organization. And it's seldom quick. This is more of a multi-year approach than a multi-week approach.
So speaking of the time to implement that, it's not like Samir also mentioned, it's not like a switch, right? So you flip on or buy a tool, and tomorrow I deploy it, done. So this is actually a journey there. And Anshul, what's your view on that one? What's a misconception there?
So I have the fortune to work with customers right across the industries. One of the things that I always lean on, and it was at the front of my presentation, it's people first, processes second, technology last. Right? You understand your people, you map out your processes, and then you go towards buying technology. Oftentimes, that's not exactly what's happening. And part of this is zero trust, least privilege. These things are methodologies that, you need to understand that there's going to be a change effect on your people, and then you need to create processes internally before buying something, right? So then you map that out. Almost you do the reverse, right? Since you're buying technology last, what's happening is people buy technology first, figure out the processes, and then have the people adopt it, right? So it's funny enough, but that's where I would say things like zero trust, least privilege, all these concepts, again, not switches that you turn on. And I have been in conversations where customers have asked me, can I buy zero trust from one of my sales guys? And it's hard you have to go back and educate the customer front saying, hey, look, this is a theoretical concept. And these are the things that you can look to do to mitigate, manage these things. Like I said, people, process, technology. Perfect.
Because a lot of times we try to find out like a silver bullets to kill the problem, right? So the technology sounds thought we can spend some money to get that, but in fact, like what you mentioned, that the people are the first, and always people have people not only the weakest link, but also the people are the things. It doesn't matter which technology you have there. So as this one, we deliberately put people, process, and then we leave the technology in the end. Now come to Kunal, you are on the technology side. So what do you say about that one? So what kind of misconception there?
Right. I mean, even from Microsoft perspective, in one of the slides, I mentioned that when Microsoft ask their customer to prioritize the zero trust deployment, the first priority one activity is to align all your people and make sure that everybody has a common goal and they understand what, because an infrastructure team and an identity team, an application team all have different languages to speak, right? Identity team might be worrying about their organization units, number of users, groups, and all that. Application team might be worrying about what kind of authorization, authentication the apps will do, what business problem the app will solve. So it's kind of a very different environment. So you have to bring all them together. It's very, very important, specifically when we are talking about zero trust. Now coming back to the technology on the and the product side, see again, we have heard everybody in the panel saying that it's not a switch which you can turn on. It's not a particular thing which you can go in the market and buy. So of course we all know, and we have to agree on that. That is not a one thing which will fix it. What is very, very important is to understand the people mindset, your organization goals, and then map it with your security policies and organization-wide policies. Once you define all that, it becomes very easy. And the third thing which we recommend is to make a discovery process. What different type of application systems your organization has, how many signals you are able to track and understand what's happening. Because once you do all that, then it is very easy to get embark on that zero trust journey. Because zero trust is a mix of old and new. So you might have a lot of things which can enable your zero trust journey already. You don't have to invest upfront. So you can start your journey, and then if in that maturity model from traditional go to optimal and then advanced. So you can go in that journey.
Very cool. That's a great insight. And all right, so since we talk about zero trust security, because and I'm sure a lot of people online they probably doesn't matter if their company are looking for implement zero trust, or they try to align, or they are kind of already in that journey. So I like to ask our panelists, what kind of challenges when you are implementing zero trust? So what kind of things we know probably were common mistakes or roadblocks along this journey? It doesn't matter if it's from people side, the process side, or the technology side. So anyone can jump in. So Kamil, maybe you can start first.
Sure. Again, I think we've talked about this now throughout this discussion. The policies and the standards for the organization, and then I would say strategizing that for your security roadmap, and how you're going to realize the model and the framework of zero trust for your organization. Selling something big to the business is not an easy thing, and it's expensive. This is not going to be a cheap undertaking. So, definitely challenges around getting support, getting executive support, and obtaining the funding that's going to be required for this. Those are going to be key challenges. And it comes down to making sure that what we position as a security strategy really feeds into the business strategy for the organization. That is where the value proposition is. And as security practitioners, we often have a challenge of correlating what we need to do, what we see as necessary from a security strategy perspective, to connect that to the business strategy and really show the value that can come of it.
Perfect. Because Kamil, you are in the IM engineering side, but what you mentioned really is actually how to, let's say, sell this zero trust model to the executives. And there are some questions from audience as well, kind of related to what you just mentioned. How can we convince or help the senior management to make a decision? Because zero trust is great, it's a great model, but they need to invest money, resource, and time on that one. So what you mentioned that really is connect that to the business side, right? So that's really important.
Bryan, I would position, and this is something that came through Kunal's presentation as well, which is a fantastic point. I would position that we couple security transformation and move to the zero trust model as part of the digital transformation for organization that they're accelerating right now as a result of the pandemic.
Okay, digital transformation definitely is one, and the new. We come to the new world after pandemic. We kind of there's not the like old norm, the new norm, right? So we have to adapt to that. Okay, so since Kamil, you mentioned Kunal's talk, so Kunal, can you from your end, what kind of challenges you can see from there, when we implement zero trust security?
So I think there are a few things which comes up, right? I mean, the first and foremost we always see is to educate a customer, because they come with a mindset, say an apps team, application manager or application side of the team comes and talk to Microsoft. They might be thinking about how they can, monitor and do shadow IT discovery and understand what kind of application it is. So they're kind of thinking about CASB kind of solution. But then again, that doesn't solve the entire zero trust ecosystem, because if you see in the presentation which I talked about, there are 6 pillars which we say has to be looked after: identity, device, your data, application, infrastructure, and network. So all that has to be looked after. It is not just this thing or that thing; it is the everything. And from a current scenario, if you see, there are 2 things which are happening together, right? If you see that there are huge disruption happening in the market, like things like Uber, Airbnb, and these kind of companies are coming up. They are challenging the existing enterprise organization to react fast. And at the same time, if you see, there's a lot of cybersecurity risk, nation state attacks are happening, specifically in the last 1 year or so during the work from home timeline. So all these things are happening together. So we have to digitalize our systems quickly and fast, and at the same time adhere and manage this security risk posture. So I think that is the challenge which every organization is facing today, because if you don't change faster, you will lag behind very, very quickly than you can even imagine. With the current change. So I think these are the things which we see or talk to the customer daily. And again, what Kunal said is that when an organization is going through a digital transformation, that's the right time to educate the customer that what security posture you have to bring into the conversation. It is not just about digitalizing your existing process. At the same time, make sure that the security is looked after.
Okay, so you touch on several important areas. from architecture, cover the major elements. It may not be just a focus on one area. You have to get this. You mentioned the 6 areas, right? So the major, the complete picture. Yeah. And also from digital transformation point of view, you need to have build that complete process. And Samir, from your point of view, because you experience quite a lot of large organizations, so when come to the zero trust security, what kind of major challenges? Doesn't matter it's technical or the process. Can you describe?
So, one of the things that have happened in the recent past is security is now an important discussion all the way up to the board level. Some companies now even include it in their financial statements. Governments are thinking of using penalties to encourage companies to take it more seriously. So, we can rest be assured that security is an important conversation. If we look at the recent problems that we've seen in the industry, let's take an example, SolarWinds, right? Very common, everyone's scared of supply chain issues, and it's a very hot topic in the industry. No company is spared. Recently, I heard, there've been, at least in the United States, Congress level panel discussions on what happened with SolarWinds and how can we combat that. So if we take that as a simple example where application teams, whether it's in the enterprise hybrid or in the cloud, thought they were securing their applications through certain processes that they might have within the organization, code scanning and so forth. But what you quickly realize is that, and this is an example we deal with all the time when we're working with customers, is that your application runs in an ecosystem. You're trying to protect the ecosystem, right? And where your application runs on a set of servers, right? That now is being managed by tech ops infrastructure, and they have a set of applications they run to support the ecosystem. The identity teams have a set of technologies that they need. And so it's all interrelated and codependent, right? And so the story around this and where I'm getting to is that things like SolarWinds have brought up that having a zero trust framework is now even more important because the ecosystem as a whole needs to be protected. You can't just say, I'm going to do the identity or I'm going to do the infrastructure. You've got to think about it more holistic. And so the conversations that now have to go up around all of the management is that we can't just look at one sector as a security team. We've got to step back. We've got to step back from saying, you know what, this is network security, this is app security, this is infrastructure security, this is my OS stack. The traditional model of how we've approached this is not doing us the right service. So with that, developing the conversation within the organization, as everyone has said, as to what it is and educating the environment, but more and more, you're going to have to use machine intelligence because this is not humanly possible to achieve that. I think it's great for the security industry and it's great for security careers. So there's lots of people who are listening to this and maybe wanting to get into the industry. It's great, it's opened this, but what it's doing is that it's bringing all the notions of our technology and how we implement together. So security, business, run an organization and change the organization, all have to understand that it is imperative that a philosophy like zero trust be involved. But I think the recent awareness is getting there, and that's a good thing. So bringing those capabilities and those discussions should now, frankly, be easier, like what security used to be 5 years ago. Now, these concepts are more prevalent because, you know what, SolarWinds has done us all I guess, a Christmas gift in the security industry for sure, because it brings out this awareness.
That's a great talk. Yeah, so SolarWinds, this is reflect the third-party risk, which one of the major reasons that now more and more companies are looking for zero trust security. So yeah, like Kunal also mentioned that you always need to verify that, right? So you cannot just trust anything coming to you. So the collaboration ecosystem is critical here. And okay, Anshul, from because a lot of times when we talk about, at least from my understanding, regarding zero trust, really is regarding a lot of times regarding the identity, right? So there's a network component, there's a identity component, but more and more feels like we talk about identity-driven kind of a zero trust. So what's your view on that one?
Yeah, as I mentioned in the conversation earlier, Bryan, identities tend to exist everywhere. So, or credentials, and they produce access for individuals throughout. So that's why a lot of the conversations around zero trust you'll see are identity centric or identity focused, moving away from the general concept of the network. Like I said, it's converging. You've always had the network perimeter. Now you have the identity perimeter. These two are converging at a point. And often this point is, the human being or the individual, because one of the core things that I always like to talk about is that an individual can have, multiple accesses and identities or credentials within the organization. So I could be, I could have, let's say if I was in a small organization, I can be a Windows admin, I can be the, Unix admin, and I can be the AD admin. So for all these three different things, I'm doing various things, and it's my identity that is approaching it and encroaching on that. So how much should I have access to? For how long should I have access to? It really starts to circulate and circulate around identity, right? Especially as we move forward, let's say from a cloud perspective, this becomes even a greater conversation, because all it is it's not just human identity. Now you're looking at machine identity, and even from a network perspective, for a traditional on-prem infrastructure, you're seeing organizations move to software-defined, right, methodologies, which are predominantly focused on machine-based identities, right, not just human identity. So that's why I think there's a plethora of conversation around zero trust and identity almost syncing together.
Yeah, so I like what you mentioned. That it really is the kind of like identity-driven or identity-centric versus a network-centric, the view to look at that. And Samir also touched on that, because that's actually challenged a lot of classic definition of different teams, right? So now you kind of break the domain, kind of you need to wire things together. And speaking of that, I'd like to ask our panel to comment on. So we talk a lot about where zero trust come from, what's going on today, and what kind of challenges we have when implement that, when some best practices. Let's talk a little bit about the future, right? So from today, move to the future. What kind of industry trends or what kind of major changes coming kind of in the next maybe a year or so? So with that, anyone can jump in. Whoever can.
I'll hop on first. I think some of the things that we've talked about here so far, and I've seen this this shift, the mindset. Technology partners that have driven through some of the stuff that Samir mentioned around C-suite executives, governments, and our technology partners that are driving the DevOps type transformations for where we deploy workloads, crossing boundaries from traditional on-premise to cloud and multi-cloud initiatives, all of that stuff. In some cases, also business-driven IT. Businesses acquiring SaaS applications, for example, for their use without the partnership of IT. Where the mindset has shifted, which has been great to see, is adopting security as part of design and build early on, as opposed to relying on the security team catching up after through bolting security on. That's not to say that security monitoring and things of that nature. Some of the things that Samir touched on, adaptive type approaches to anomaly detection, behavior analytics, stepping up authentication, increasing friction when the increase in trust levels and assurance levels is required. Those are all still good things that can sit within the security perimeter on the outside of a solution, but primarily building in security into applications and systems is becoming more prevalent, and the mindset has shifted, and that is fantastic to see. And I think that trend is going to continue.
Excellent. So,
I think something that Anshul also touched on, which is really, I think, going to be key going forward, and it is already on the minds of security professionals, certainly, is machine-to-machine identity management. That is a core part of adopting the zero trust model at the technology layer, and that's going to be key, right? It goes down to managing secrets, managing your certificates effectively, and the identities for not just people, but all of those things that are now becoming extremely prevalent across all types of networks.
Perfect. So identity, not just the human identity, it's machine identity, even also application, right? So all those are kind of more and more, the number is more than just the people. So that's critical. All right, anyone else want to add on to this future, like current trends of where the industry is going?
Yeah, one thing which I wanted to add in here is that try to move into the use the power of the cloud, because you have to understand that to get into the true zero trust model, you have to have right set of risk, and right set of risk-based signals. So once you receive those signals, you will be able to understand and analyze and then implement appropriate preventive and detective controls on it. So which means that, and you need a lot of resiliency and scale to do that. So embracing cloud, say for example, cloud-based identity solutions and CASB solutions, which can give you those signals from your device, from your user application infrastructure network, is going to be key. It's going to be important. The organization which can harness more signals on what they're doing within their organization can make more intelligent decision, whether it is a security posture management or even a business decision. So I think that's the key for a future.
So leverage the power of a cloud and to collect more data and analyze more sources and leverage all those latest technologies. And cloud actually really changed the game. So not only cloud itself, but enable like a cloud-based identity and really change the game. Really. All right.
Yeah, I think cloud's definitely changing the game, but one of the things we should be all sensitive to is that we're not overnight going to be in the cloud. And unfortunately, I see this, quite a bit in the industry where, organizations, whether they're looking at processes or looking at purchasing solutions, tend to start looking at cloud-centric without having a thought, does the solution cover the gamut of my on-prem, my hybrid, my cloud? Can I use the same technology fluently across? Does it, because that's what's going to save you not only money and time, but having uniformity helps with training, helps with consistency of approach, and helps with time to implementation. And so as we see more and more technologies, especially cloud-centric, what we'll start to see is a leveling shift, because I know many Fortune, say 5,000 companies globally are adopting cloud, but they can't shut down their current infrastructure. Yeah. New companies have that luxury. And as we look at this challenge, what's going to happen is we're going to see a lot more creative solutions now in the industry that are going to help us level that playing field, cloud to the ground.
Yeah, very true. Again, back to your point, Samir, it's not like a switch. You switch to cloud, especially for large organizations. You have tons of legacy systems, not legacy, current systems. So it's and some impossible to move to the cloud. So how do you handle that? All right, I like to also hear from Anshul, because there are a lot of new things. I heard those names constantly from my past events as well, like just in time, like all those related to identity as well. So how do you see the industry trends right now for zero trust?
So just like anything else, what we're noticing is that we have to balance change management, meaning people's change, right? And how to make it a little bit more convenient for individuals to do that. So I'm going to tie it back to Kunal's point. A, leverage the cloud. Why? Like it or not, I'll say it simply. Compute power from the cloud is significant, and it can be turned up and down in a very short amount of time to get X amount of results. Versus if you were to create that same amount of infrastructure on-prem, it's permanent. Right. The other thing that we will start to look at significantly more in near term is analytics. Right, a lot starting to focus on analytics, starting to analyze why people do or why an identity or a machine behaves in that certain sense. Today we're focusing predominantly on human identity, but slowly and steadily we're now starting to see that we're going to look at machine to machine identity. We're going to focus on understanding the behavior of the machine. So if someone takes over that machine or has the capability of taking that over that machine, we can predict that behavior and have risk tied to it. That is what we're definitely going to see, tying risk to these identities, whether you be human or machine.
Okay, great. Which I also echo a couple of talks we already there. So one is a machine to machine, and those are really kind of a critical part. And also, so how do we kind of wire everything together and make that more automated as well? All right. It's based on the time, we actually coming to almost the end of this panel discussion. I know we can go forever for this because we have a lot of things we can discuss. So before we wrap up this panel, I'd like to ask each of our panelists, give some suggestions. So if you can only name one kind of a tip or advice to our audience today, so what do you want to say to them? What kind of top one suggestion or advice you want to give to them?
Learn about identity. We need identity people.
Okay, yeah. All right, so identity. All right. As you can see, we moved a lot, but okay. So that's all, or you want to add a little bit more, Kamil?
Well, half jokingly, but half not. In all honesty, identity has been a field that has suffered from a lack of talent, and it's really difficult to attain and retain because identity professionals are always in high demand, and it's been like this for in excess of 10 years now. So it really is not getting resolved, and I'm not seeing a change for the positive in this regard from an availability of a skilled workforce and skilled identity professionals. So if you have the ability within your organization to hop into projects to maybe obtain some experience that way around participating in identity and access management projects and initiatives within your organization, definitely jump on that. That is something that is going to be paying dividends for a long time in your cybersecurity career path.
Excellent. So Kamil actually talk about also the career development. So for people online, if you're interested, okay, which domain I need to put more effort, maybe for my future career, identity definitely is one. That's also the reason we put this Identity Security Summit on May 27th, because we feel this industry need a lot of professional in this domain. All right, cool. All right, anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, I think, the advice that I give to people in the security career, it's a great career now, certainly growing. We will see newer frameworks that will come in, newer terminologies. Essentially, they're all coming back to the same standard that everything we do should be deliberate. There will be tools and technologies that will help us along the path. I think what's the most important is helping our organizations develop what is visibility or security observability, getting in front of that. That solves tremendous amounts of problems because it gives you the ability to make better decisions. So, everything you look at, focus on the basics, and then once you sort the basics, the bigger challenges are easier. If you try it the other way, it starts to become unattainable. So steps, crawl, walk, and run. But these are good career times for our industry for sure. Like Kamil said, go identity.
Okay, we get a consensus. So number one, okay, besides identity, what I heard also from Samir is you need a visibility, right? So you need a visibility, you need to know what's going on there, and also you need to back to the basic. So although we like the fancy things, all those new terms, but you need to cover your basic first, right? So you still need those foundation to go long way. All right, Kunal and then Anshul, what's your suggestion there?
Yeah, so let's first, if I talk about the career development perspective, I would recommend anybody who wants to begin the career in the security path is to, and exactly I will echo what Samir has said, is to fall into your basic, understand your basic properly, what basic, because everything what is happening today, what will happen in future, you can learn the top layers, the new layers, but if you don't have a basic foundation correct, it will be very difficult to adopt change and understand and be resilient. So anybody who wants to start their career in security, fall back to your basic, whether it is application, whichever area you feel you're comfortable with, have a solid basic base around that. So that's from a development perspective, and from a future perspective to area to be focused on. I think any security product you take in the market or talk about any security today, it all gets interconnected with your identity, right? So to secure your identity is the key to get into that paradigm. So I think anybody who's keen to get into this in this exciting market, I think think about identity, think about how to secure identity, or not just enterprise identity, but your business to business identity, your consumer identity. Think about all those scenarios, and I think that would be a good start.
Excellent. And also link back to the identity, foundation, identity, and identity actually all those authorization, AAA, right? So authentication, authorization, accounting is kind of a fundamental things for the cybersecurity. All right, so Anshul, what's your suggestion?
So I'll take a little different stab at things. Obviously, highlighting what the rest of the team has said from a career perspective. Absolutely. If you don't know the basics, then you don't have a lot to stand on. But one of the things I would like to encourage, especially nowadays, is within organizations, as technology or security practitioners, we do a great job in speaking in our terms and our lingo, but often have a challenge in translating this to, whether it's our executives, whether it's other individuals within our organizations, because everybody's not going to speak the same language, like it or not. So I think we should start to learn how to grasp and take those wordings and translate them for other individuals in our organizations. And I think that can help security practices significantly increase, right? Even behaviors significantly increase.
Perfect. Everyone should be in sales, because you need to sell your idea, your solution, your process, or your methodology, like a zero trust methodology. How do you sell to your peers and your manager, your boss, or your other people? So, which definitely is a soft skill side, right? So of the cybersecurity.
Bryan, we that's a fantastic point, and those soft skills that you're referring to, which is the communication skills, are now starting to be commonly referred to as power skills, because they allow you to really influence where an organization goes.
Excellent. So I like that change, soft, not soft, but power. That's great. All right, so that's all the time we have. And so I like to ask everyone online, so give a virtual applause to our speakers. So they come to share their insight and experience, and we learn a lot from them. Thank you very much, all our panelists.